The Messianic seed, the awaited righteous one, comes to save the world. The Christmas story that we are all very familiar of, or most likely familiar of. I'm going to maybe tell it a little bit different than your normal sermon around this topic. This is a story that began in Genesis 3:15. It's the tale of two seeds that leads to the seed of the Messiah who came, that we now worship, Jesus. What we get in the picture of Genesis is Genesis 1 is God creates all that is in one chapter, including the man and the woman. And we get to chapter 2, and it zooms in and rewinds a little bit and gives us a little bit more detail on the creation of the man and the woman. And it gives them two specific jobs. The first is to be fruitful and multiply and to fill the earth and to subdue it, which is a kingly role. This is given to Abraham, the leader of a people, and to David, so kingly role. And then their second role is to cultivate and to keep, which is a priestly role. This is the same thing that's given to the Levitical priests later in the Bible. And this is what gives us the language, starting in page 2 of the Bible, for being called a royal priesthood. It's all the way through the text. And what this means is that you and I are given many kingdoms, you could think of it. And it's our responsibility to rule those many kingdoms with love and grace, and to cultivate and keep those environments in such a manner that when people impact those kingdoms, they're impacted by the love of Christ. So that's a mini picture of what we're called to do, and it's given to us in those first couple chapters. But then in chapter 3, the devil comes along, and he begins as a serpent to whisper lies, accusations, and content around death. And he ends up leading Adam and Eve into sin. And directly following the sin that they fall into, choosing to take and eat of the one thing that they were told not to eat of, God goes into sort of a lament poem. And this is where we are led to Genesis 3:15, where God is talking to the serpent. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, and he shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. So directly following sin, God tells us what the story of the Bible is going to be and what the solution to that problem will be. You see, I made a cute little chart with some little pictures from PowerPoint to help us out here. So you have enmity between the woman and the serpent, and between their children. But ultimately, we know that there's going to come one, eventually, who's not just going to continue to be at war with the seed of the serpent or the offspring of the serpent, but will deal with the serpent himself. And if you turn to page 4 of the Bible, you get the story of Cain and Abel. That begins the story that will repeat over and over through Scripture. And what we see in this passage is that what determines whether you are of the offspring of the serpent or the offspring of the woman, an eventual righteous one, is the actions that you take, not the specific bloodline that you come from. So, obviously, Cain and Abel come from the same two people, Adam and Eve. But what happens is they go and they present an offering to the Lord, and Abel's is accepted, and Cain's is not. And God comes to Cain, and he says, "Why is your face downcast? Did you not know that you still have the opportunity to do good or do tov?" He uses the exact same word that he uses in Genesis 1 when he says at the end of each day that it was good. And so he's telling us that we have the opportunity, the decision to do good, even when our first opportunity or chance we came up short. And the next thing that he says is sin is crouching at your door. Its desire is for you, but you must or you will rule it. And what follows right after that is we see that Cain gives in to the sin, and he murders his brother. And then we're given a genealogy that shows the line of Cain, and there is increase in death and murder, there is increase in abuse of women and children. But then God provides another, Seth, a son to Adam and Eve, to replace Abel. And you see the generations, the genealogy following Seth leads to Noah. And so we see that it's not just what bloodline you come from, not just being the Jewish people, but the picture from the beginning was whose side you're on determined by the actions that you take and the life that you live.